Hi dear students. Today we will discuss third unit. Heading is beams. Okay. So in the beams, generally based on the load carrying capacity, we can classify it as ordinary steel beams, built up beams, plate girders and all. So when the beam is subjected to the light loads, okay, in that case we are providing the ordinary type of beams. So in this ordinary type of beams, again we can classify it based on the supports, like a laterally supported beam and laterally unsupported beam. Okay, so laterally supported beam, the another name of laterally supported beam is restrained beam. Laterally unsupported beam, the another name of laterally unsupported beam is unrestrained beams. So this is about ordinary beams. Next one is built up beams. If the load is more than the light load, the load is somewhat heavy. So in that case, the additional plates are provided in the ordinary beam, like in the flanges. Above the flanges, additionally we are providing some plates. So it is to be built up to take care of the maximum loads. So this is the case of built up beams. But in the case of heavily loaded structure like railways and all, you can see, in railways, the girders will take much loads. Okay. So in that case, the ordinary beam, even though the built up beams not able to carry that much loads. So in that case, we have to design the plate girder. So you might have been studied the concrete structures. So in that concrete structures, we are providing the concrete, the mix design we are doing for the concrete, like nominal mix design, design mix like that. So what is the difference between nominal mix and design mix? So nominal mix means M10, M15, M20 up to M25. So generally as per the IS code up to M20 grade of concrete, we are considered as a nominal mix. But in the case of bridges and all, we have to provide the mix more than the M20, right? So M30 grade of concrete, M40 like that, it will go. So in that case, based on the requirements, we are in the site, we are designing the mix ratio. It's not like M30, M40. The mix ratio is more than the M20. So based on the design requirements, we made the proportion to design the mix. That is called design mix to take care of the heavy load. So similarly, in the steel structures also, so you know very well steel structures and all, the elements which are made in the factory itself, right? So when they are made in the factory, the elements, they are having some standard sections, rolled steel sections, the size, the dimensions, weight, properties, everything. The standard sections are they are manufactured in the fabrication side. So in that company, there is some restriction is there, like ISMB 600 is the maximum depth. So that type of steel elements, like I section, channel section, T section, angle section, whatever it may be, we discussed earlier, that can carry some particular loads only. So that light loads and all the rolled steel section can able to carry. So whenever the load is increased, in that case, we are going for the built up section, like additional plates are provided in the already existing sections. That is called the built up sections, right? Even though the built up sections are not able to carry the load like railways and all, where we are providing the girders, so there we are not able to provide the existing rolled steel sections. So in that case, like a design mix in the bridges, the steel structure, steel elements also, we are going to design the particular dimension of the steel structure based on the requirements, field requirements. Okay, so that is called the plate girder beams. Plate girder. So this plate girder we will discuss about the next unit, fourth unit. So in this third unit, we will discuss only about the ordinary beam and the built-up beams. So in the ordinary beam, I already said it is again classified as laterally supported beam and laterally unsupported beam. The another name of laterally supported beam is restrained beam, and another name of laterally unsupported beam is unrestrained beam. Right? Okay. Now we can see in this laterally supported beam. What do you mean by laterally supported beam? Generally in the RCC structure, residential building, office building, hospital building, whatever it may be, you can see in this building, the beams are restrained with the slab, isn't it? So slab, under the slab, they are providing the beam. Then the beam is connected with the column is connected with the foundation, the foundation is connected with the earth, soil, right? So in the framework structure, so there is a connectivity between the slab and the beam. The beam is not alone, individual member, it is connected with the, throughout the beam it is connected with the slab, isn't it? So that is called laterally supported beam, restrained beam, since the beam is restrained with the slab, right? So it is the lateral dimension of the beam is supporting with the slab, that is why it is laterally supported beam. But you can see in the industries like roof structure, industrial building, you can see the beams are provided like a steel member, channel section, I section, whatever it may be, they are providing in the industrial structure, but above there is no slabs are provided. Some cases there is no slabs are provided in the industrial structures. So it means it is not laterally supported. It is not laterally supported with the slab or whatever it may be. That is called laterally unsupported beam, and another name is unrestrained beam. And built-up beams, I said already, built-up beams, when the load is heavy maximum, in that case, if you take example I section. So in I section, it is contain two flanges, top and bottom, in middle web. So above the flanges, top flange and below the bottom flange, additionally we are providing some plates to take care of the additional loads. That is called the built-up beams. Okay, so now we will see what is beam. A structural member subjected to the vertical loads is called beam, isn't it? A structural member, beam is a structural member and it is subjected to the transverse vertical load. So it is called the beam. Generally, I sections are the mostly preferred section as the beam than the other section in the steel structure because of the more moment of inertia in major axis. So you can see if you consider the I section, so you have a lot of plenty of sections available in the steel table also you referred. Okay, there are so many steel sections, standard sections and forms of sections are made in the company like I section, channel section, T section, isn't it? So in this different types of different forms of section, the I section is majorly used, right, as a beam. Why? Because it has the moment of inertia, maximum moment of inertia in the major axis. You know the influence of moment of inertia. What is the parameter? The important parameter moment of inertia means flexural rigidity. Suppose Young's modulus and I value, moment of inertia. So the flexural rigidity is increased in the beam. What will happen? Obviously, the strength of the beam will be increased, isn't it? So when the strength of the beam is increased, okay, it can resist more load. So if you want to increase the strength of the building, the moment of inertia should be maximum. So in the case of I section, the moment of inertia is maximum. So that is the reason why we are providing the I section beam in the structural members. Okay, right. So next we can see laterally buckling of beams. What do you mean by laterally buckling of beams? So in the column also we can see the buckling of column and all, isn't it? Like that in the beam. So as I said earlier, in the beam mostly we are using the I section, isn't it? So in this I section, in the top there will be the flanges. The bottom there will be the flanges. You can see here, this is the flange and this is the flange. So in between there is a web. This web you can see the height of the web is more. Okay, and also the web is very thin member. Web is very thin member. So because of this, when the load is acting, it will buckle like this. Lateral direction, it will buckle. So whenever any loads are at perpendicular to the beam, the beam is going to bend in the lateral direction due to the moment of inertia in y direction. Okay, will be very less than the z direction. So you know very well, z direction means here they are meaning x direction. Okay, xx direction. Okay, so generally in the I section B, the moment of inertia is very, very less in the y direction when compared to the z direction. It means x direction, isn't it? Why? Because you know very well, moment of inertia. For example, you can take some for rectangular section, whatever it may be. So moment of inertia in x direction, z direction, what? BD cube by 12, isn't it? So breadth into depth cube divided by 12. So depth is already more. For the depth also cube. Okay. Suppose the depth is 100 mm means 100 mm the whole cube. Therefore, what will happen in x direction? The moment of inertia will be maximum. But in y direction, you can see what is the formula? Not BD cube by 12. It is the DB cube by 12. So when DB cube by 12, when compared to depth, breadth is very less. And breadth suppose very less, suppose 50 mm, the 50 the whole cube. So when compared to the 100 the whole cube, 50 the whole cube is very less. Therefore, moment of inertia in y direction is very less when compared to the z direction, right? So because of that one, in the y direction, there will be the lateral bending will be take place. Okay, so now how to avoid this lateral buckling of the beam? So you can understood now, because of the less moment of inertia in y direction, the beam will buckle in the y direction, lateral direction. Now we can see how to avoid the lateral buckling of the beam, right? So generally, lateral buckling of the beams can be avoided only by providing the supports called bracings. So whenever we are providing the bracing systems, we can avoid the lateral buckling. So we can use angle section, channel section, whatever it may be for the bracing in between the two beams. Then we can avoid the lateral buckling. And also by attaching the top compression flange in the concrete bed. So you know very well in the top compression flange, if you provide the concrete bed, so it will become the laterally restrained beam, laterally supported beam. So because of the laterally supported beam, it can arrest more loads. Therefore, the lateral buckling of the beam can be also eliminated in this case. So these are the two conditions we can able to avoid the lateral buckling of the beam. One is providing the bracing system. Another one is providing the top compression flange in the concrete bed. Okay, is it clear? Now, different forms of beams. So you can see the different forms of beams. Okay, you can see the different forms of beams. Now, we can see the joist. Okay, what are the different forms of beams? Joist, girders, purlins, lintel, grit, spandrel. So these are all the different 6 forms of the beams. One is joist, another one is girder, another one is purlin, another one is lintel, grit, and spandrel. Okay, so now we can see the joist. What is joist? Okay, so when the beams are provided in the trusses to support the roof, and when provided between the two main beams are called joist. So in this case, you can see this is the roof structure. Okay, so in this roof structure, when the beams are provided in the trusses to support the roof, and when provided between the two main beams are called joist. Okay, so you can see in the figure 1, it is marked as 1 is called joist. So this is the main beams, the roof structure. This is the main beam, and this is the main beams. So in between these main beams, we are providing the, in between this main beam, we are providing the joist. Okay, so when the beams are provided in the trusses to support the roof, and when provided between the two main beams, is called the joist. Next, girder. So what do you mean by girder? A large main beams supporting a number of joists in a steel structure is called girder. Here beam number 2 is called girder. So large main beam supporting a number of joists. So here you can see this is joist. So supporting this joint, we are providing the large main beams. So this is the main beams denoted as 2, marked as 2. So these are all called as main beams. The main beams are called generally girders. Next, purlin. So what do you mean by purlin? The beams which carry the roof load are called purlin in trusses. So the beams which carry the roof load is called purlin. So you can see here. So this is the roof. So in this roof, in this direction, we are providing the beams. Okay. So above this purlin beams, okay, we are providing the roof covering material like AC sheet, GI sheet, galvanized iron sheet, asbestos sheet, and all. So to take care of these AC sheets and GI sheet roof covering, we are providing the purlin beam. Okay, so this number 3 is called purlin beams. Next, lintel. So you know very well what is lintel. The beam which supports the masonry above the doors and windows. Wherever the openings is there, like doors, windows, and all. Above the doors and windows, we are providing the beam to avoid the cracks and all, to take care of the load above the openings. So we are providing the beam is called lintel beam. And grit. Okay, so what is grit? Yeah, horizontal beam provided between the columns of the industrial building are called the grits. Horizontal beam provided between the columns of the industrial building. Okay, you can see here. So here, this is the columns. So in between the column, the horizontal beams are provided. So this is called grit. Okay, and spandrel, it is nothing but exterior beams at the roof level of the building. At the roof level of the building, everywhere we can provide the exterior beam. Okay, that exterior beams are called technically spandrel. So these are the 6 categories of different forms of beams. One is joist, it is nothing but main beams at the roof structure, and girder. Sorry, joist is the in between the main beams we are providing the joist, and the main beams are called as girders. And purlin, it take care of the roof load. And lintel, wherever the opening like doors and window, above the doors and window, we are providing the lintel. And grit, it is nothing but the horizontal beam provided in between the column of the industrial structures. And spandrel, it is nothing but the exterior beams. The exterior beams are called the spandrel. Okay, so these are all the different forms. These are all the different forms of the beams. Now we can see the plastic analysis of beams. So generally in the steel structures, we are considering the plastic analysis of beams. Why we can go for the plastic analysis means, so you know very well, the concrete is the brittle material. Okay, so whenever the maximum load will come, the concrete will fail suddenly. But steel have the property of ductility. So because of the ductility property of the steel structure will not become failure like a concrete suddenly. So steel structure not failure suddenly like a concrete, you know very well, because of the ductility property. So by taking the advantages of the ductility property in the steel structure, we cannot consider the ultimate here. We cannot consider the working load. We can consider the up to the plastic load, ultimate load. We can consider the maximum load, maximum permissible load up to the ultimate load, plastic load. Okay, so it will be more effective, isn't it? So that is the reason why we are doing plastic analysis in the steel structures, but there is no need of plastic analysis in the concrete structures. Okay, because concrete is a brittle material, steel is the ductile material. So by taking the advantages of ductility, we can design the steel up to the ultimate load. Okay, so in the first chapter itself, we discussed what is the different method of design, like working stress method, ultimate method, limit state method, and all, isn't it? So in this, I can see this plastic analysis of beam. You can take the rectangular beam. So you know the stress distribution, right? So generally in the neutral axis, what is the stress? The stress will be zero at the neutral axis. Then top or bottom. So you know this is neutral axis. Above the neutral axis, it is the compression flange, and below the neutral axis, it is the tension zone. Okay. So in this compression zone, tension zone. In the compression zone, from the neutral axis, the y value is 0, and this y value is increasing. What will happen? The stress value also increasing, isn't it? Similarly, in the below also, neutral axis 0. When the y value increasing, what will happen? The stress value also increasing in the tensile. So when the y value is 0 at the neutral axis, the bending stress will be 0, and the y value increasing in the compression zone, the compressive stress will be increased. The y value increase in the tension zone, the tensile stress also will be increasing, isn't it? So here the maximum stress, yield stress, here the maximum stress F1 should be less than the Fy when it is within the elastic range. So within the elastic range, the applied stress F1 should be less than the yield stress Fy. The F1 should be less than the Fy. Suppose you can see this is the Fy and this is the F1. The F1 value should be less than the Fy in the yield, within the yield elastic range, and within the elastic zone. So up to the elastic zone, suppose considering the up to elastic zone like this. Okay, up to this point. So what will happen? This F1 will be is equal to Fy. It means the applied stress will be is equal to yield stress. Therefore, within the elastic zone, the F1 will be is equal to Fy. And in the elastoplastic zone, so here what will happen? In some cases, up to this point, the stress will be increased in the elastic. After that, it will be converted to the plastic range. So from the elastic to plastic, it can change from the elastic zone to plastic zone. So the stress distribution will be like this. Similarly, this is, you can see, fully plastic zone. It is coming to the plastic zone. So after the, it means plastic zone means, you know, the material will not comes to its original position when the removal of the load. So even though the material will not come to its original position when removal of the load, that is the plastic zone, fully plastic zone. So in this plastic zone, the stress distribution diagram will be like this. Okay. So now we can see plastic neutral axis. Plastic neutral axis. The axis which divides the total area of the structure into two equal areas is called plastic neutral axis. Okay. So plastic neutral axis is nothing but the axis which divides the total area of the structure into two equal areas is called the plastic neutral axis, and it is different from the neutral axis. The neutral axis is different, plastic neutral axis is different. In the symmetrical bodies, plastic neutral axis and neutral axis will be coincidence. Like a rectangular section if you take, it's the symmetrical section. In this case, the neutral axis and plastic neutral axis will be coincident, same. But in the case of unsymmetrical bodies, the plastic neutral axis and the neutral axis, that's not coincidence. Okay, why? Because in the unsymmetrical section, the area, equal area will not exactly meet the neutral axis. So the equal area will be exactly meet the plastic neutral axis. Okay, so in the case of unsymmetrical section, the neutral axis and the plastic neutral axis will be different. In the case of symmetrical axis, the neutral axis and plastic neutral axis will be coincidence. Okay, so what is the plastic section modulus ZP? Now we can calculate how to calculate plastic section modulus ZP. There is a formula to find out the plastic section modulus ZP. It's a very, very important formula. ZP is equal to A by 2 into YC bar plus YT bar. Okay. So plastic section modulus ZP is equal to A by 2 into YC bar plus YT bar, where A is equal to total area, YC bar is equal to centroid of the compression area about plastic neutral axis. Okay, YC bar is nothing but the centroid of compression area about the plastic neutral axis. Similarly, YT bar is nothing but the centroid of tension area about the plastic neutral axis. For example, you can see in this rectangular section, this is the plastic neutral axis. So it can divide the equal area above and bottom, isn't it? That's called plastic neutral axis. So this is the depth, capital D of the section. This is the breadth, capital B of the section. That from this center, your neutral axis and plastic neutral axis coincides. Why? Because it's a rectangular section, it is the symmetrical section, isn't it? Now you can see here, see here, from here to here, the distance is D by 2. Similarly, from here to here, the distance is D by 2. Therefore, what is YC bar? It is nothing but centroid of compression area about plastic neutral axis. So from here to here, this is the compression zone. Centroid of the compression zone means here. Therefore, this is already D by 2. From this D by 2, this plastic neutral axis to this centroid is, this distance is D by 4. Similarly, tension area, centroid of the tension area about the neutral axis is from here to here. So this distance is D by 4. Therefore, this YC bar is equal to D by 4 and this YT bar is equal to D by 4. Total D, overall depth is D. Then we divide the equal area D by 2, D by 2. So compression flange D by 2, tension zone D by 2. In this compression zone, centroid is D by 4. Therefore, YC bar D by 4, YT bar D by 4. Area is breadth into depth. Therefore, you know the formula ZP equal to A by 2 into YC bar plus YT bar. So area is B into D divided by 2 into YC bar D by 4 plus YT bar D by 4. So this is how you can calculate the plastic section modulus. Okay. So now you can see how to calculate the plastic section modulus of the I section shown in figure. You can see here, this is the I section. Okay. So breadth of the I section is, you can see here 140 mm flange and thickness of the flange is 20 mm and this thickness of the web is 10 mm and the overall depth of the I section is 300 mm and this thickness of the flange is 20 mm, isn't it? Now we can calculate the plastic section modulus ZP for this I section. So what is the formula to find out the ZP? It is nothing but A by 2 into YC bar plus YT bar. A by 2 into YC bar plus YT bar. So what is A? Area is nothing but total area of the section, I section given. So what is the total area? Here you can see this is 140 into 20. Similarly, here also flange 140 into 20. So two flanges. Dimension is 140 by 20. Therefore, 2 into 140 by 20 plus, you can see this web. Okay, here already 20 for flange, we have to deduct from overall the 300. So total depth of the I section is 300 From this flange 20 you deduct, so remaining is how much? 260. So depth of the web is 260 and thickness is 10 mm. Therefore, this web area is 260 into 10. The flange area is 140 into 20, 2 times 2 flange. Therefore, 2 into 140 into 20 plus 260 into 10, you will get the total area of the I section. Now, what we have to do? We have to find out the YC bar and YT bar. So, this is the symmetrical section. Therefore, YC bar will be is equal to YT bar. It means the centroid of the compression area about the plastic neutral axis will be is equal to centroid of the tension area about the plastic neutral axis. So what is the how to find out the centroid of the compression area about the plastic neutral axis? YZ bar equal to, you have the formula A1 Y1 plus A2 Y2 divided by A1 plus A2, isn't it? A1 Y1 plus A2 Y2 divided by A1 plus A2. Here A1, you know, the flange. Suppose you are taking this flange 140 into 20, okay, into Y1. So Y1 means from the center, okay, to the center of this flange. So center of the flange means 20 by 2, 10 here, 10 plus from center here total, you can see how much, okay, how much here, total 260. Out of this 260, from center to this place 130, isn't it? Is it clear? I will show you the diagram, just a minute. So here you can see from here, okay, so from here to here center, okay, this is the suppose center. So from here to here, how much total from this web distance, you know, this web distance is how much? 260. So from this 260, this distance is of 130, and this Y1 is nothing but the center of the flange section. So this 20, therefore this is 10. So from here to here 130 plus here to here 10, therefore 140 mm. Okay, so here Y1. So Y1 is 140 mm plus next this web. Okay, the web is here 10 mm thickness. So 10 into this area is 10 into this 130 and divided by how much? Y2 distance. Y2 distance is how much? 65. 130 divided by 2. This is from the plastic neutral axis to center of this web. Okay. So from here to here, this value is 65. Total from here to here 130. Therefore here to here 65. Therefore 130, 10 into 130 area into Y2 is 65. Therefore again A1 plus A2. A1 is 140 into 20 and A2 is 10 into 130. Web area, flange area. Just you can calculate YC bar. That YC bar is nothing but YT bar. So you know very well the YC bar is nothing but YT bar. Therefore, you can calculate the YC bar and the YT bar. Okay. Then you can substitute ZP value. ZP is equal to A by 2 into YC bar plus YT bar. So you can substitute all the YC bar and YT bar and A value. You can able to find out the ZP value. Okay. 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 Next, you can see here to calculate the plastic section modulus of the flange only. So same problem, only find out the plastic section modulus of the flange. Therefore, ZP equal to formula A by 2 into YC bar plus YT bar. Area of the flange, you know, 2 flanges, so 140 into 20 into 2 times will get. And YC bar, YC bar means from center of the web to middle 140 already, you know. So YC bar and YT bar is equal to what? Here 140 mm. Therefore, ZP is equal to area 5600 divided by 2 into 140 plus 140. You will get the section modulus, plastic section modulus of the flanges alone. So like that, you are able to calculate plastic section modulus for any section by using this formula A by 2 into YC bar plus YT bar. So I hope you understand. Thank you all.